There's a common misconception, a deeply ingrained societal programming that tells us to be nice, to be agreeable, to put others' needs before our own. We're taught that this is the path to success, to happiness, to acceptance. But what if that deeply held belief, that seemingly virtuous trait, is actually holding you back? What if being nice is not a strength, but your biggest weakness? You find yourself constantly accommodating, always saying yes, avoiding conflict at all costs. You might even pride yourself on being a people pleaser. But beneath the surface, there's a gnawing feeling, a sense of being overlooked, undervalued, or even exploited. You give and give, but rarely receive in equal measure. You bite your tongue when you should speak up. You defer when you should lead. And you compromise your own desires for the sake of perceived harmony. This isn't just about being polite. It's about a fundamental misunderstanding of power dynamics and human nature. It's about a strategy that, while well-intentioned, ultimately leaves you vulnerable and disempowered. But to the Machiavellian, this isn't just a flaw. It's a fatal strategic error. The second you prioritize being nice over being effective, you surrender control. You become predictable, easily manipulated, and ultimately irrelevant in the grand game of influence. Niceness, in its purest, most unthinking form, is a shield that invites attack, a sign of weakness that predators instinctively exploit. It's not about being cruel, but about understanding that the world doesn't reward naive benevolence. It rewards strategic action. If they see you constantly seeking approval, constantly avoiding friction, they don't see a good person. They see an opportunity. This is the brutal law Machiavelli understood before anyone else. The path to power often lies in shedding the very virtues society champions. Let's get one thing straight. Being nice rarely earns you genuine respect or lasting advantage. What it does is shift the power away from you into the hands of those willing to exploit your agreeableness. The strong, they understand that true influence comes not from being liked by everyone, but from being respected by those who matter. They let the discomfort burn. They let the expectation of their compliance hang in the air, untouched, because they know the real move is this: to be strategically indifferent to external validation. Make them adapt to your terms, not the other way around. This isn't about being a villain. It's about being a force. It's about understanding that your value isn't determined by how much you appease others, but by how much you command your own space. When you stop being nice and start being strategic, the immediate psychological impact on others is profound. They shift from seeing you as a resource to be used to a presence to be reckoned with. The dynamic changes from one of passive acceptance to one of active consideration. You become less of a doormat and more of a gatekeeper. This is about reclaiming your agency, not seeking validation. It's about control, not emotional weakness. Most people are nice because they crave validation and fear rejection. They believe that by being agreeable, they can avoid conflict and gain acceptance. But this belief stems from a place of emotional need, not strategic thinking. You don't want to be liked, you want to be effective. Likability is for social gatherings. Effectiveness is for life. The desire for constant harmony is a trap that keeps you from making bold moves and asserting your true value. It's a self-imposed limitation that signals to others that you're willing to compromise your own interests for their approval. This isn't a sign of virtue. It's a sign of weakness. True power lies not in being universally liked, but in being selectively respected. It's about understanding that your worth is not determined by how many people you please, but by how much you command your own destiny. Let's apply this to a few common situations. You're in a meeting and a colleague consistently interrupts you or dismisses your ideas. The nice response is to let it slide, to avoid confrontation, to maintain the peace. The Machiavellian response is to hold your ground, to reclaim your time, to assert your presence. You don't have to be rude, but you do have to be firm. A simple, "I haven't finished my point," delivered with calm authority, can be more powerful than 1,000 passive-aggressive sighs. Or consider a social setting where someone makes a backhanded compliment at your expense. The nice response is to laugh it off, to pretend it didn't sting, to absorb the blow. The strategic response is to let the comment hang in the air, to meet their gaze with a neutral expression, to refuse to play their game. The silence that follows will be more eloquent than any witty comeback. In that moment, you're not just refusing to be a victim. You're demonstrating that you're not a target. You're not just being assertive. You're being strategic. You're not just being respected. You're being feared. Now let's delve into the colder, more elite moves. Sometimes being nice is not just a weakness, it's a liability. Consider the art of strategic ambiguity. When confronted with a direct question that seeks to box you in, the nice person feels compelled to provide a clear, definitive answer. The Machiavellian, however, understands the power of the non-answer, the artful deflection, the subtle shift of focus. This isn't about lying. It's about controlling the narrative, about refusing to be pinned down. Another elite move is the strategic withdrawal of attention or validation. When someone is accustomed to your niceness, your constant availability, your unwavering support, the sudden subtle withdrawal of these can be profoundly unsettling. This isn't about ghosting or being overtly cruel. It's about recalibrating the dynamic, forcing them to reevaluate their assumptions about your accessibility and their own importance. It's a psychological judo throw, using their expectation of your niceness against them. The mechanism behind these moves is simple. They disrupt established patterns, create uncertainty, and force others to invest more effort in understanding your true intentions, thereby shifting the power dynamic in your favor. Let's apply these principles to more complex scenarios. In a business negotiation, the nice person seeks common ground, compromises readily, and fears appearing aggressive. The Machiavellian negotiator, however, understands that the most powerful position is one of strategic indifference to the outcome. They are willing to walk away, to let the deal collapse, because they know that true leverage comes from not needing the deal as much as the other party. This isn't about being unreasonable, it's about projecting an aura of self-sufficiency that forces the other side to concede. In romantic relationships, the nice partner often tolerates disrespect, avoids difficult conversations, and sacrifices their own needs to maintain harmony. The strategic partner, however, understands that healthy relationships are built on mutual respect, not one-sided appeasement. They set clear boundaries, communicate their needs assertively, and are willing to endure temporary discomfort for long-term relational health. This isn't about being selfish, it's about demanding the respect you deserve, thereby elevating the quality of the relationship. Even in online interactions, where anonymity often emboldens aggression, the nice person engages in endless debates, seeking to correct misinformation or win arguments. The Machiavellian, however, understands that not every battle is worth fighting. They choose their engagements carefully, knowing that sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. They refuse to be drawn into petty squabbles, thereby preserving their energy and their reputation. Now you might be thinking, won't this make me seem cruel? Or, is this manipulative? These are valid questions, rooted in conventional morality. But from a strategic perspective, these objections miss the point. The goal isn't to be liked by everyone, it's to be effective in achieving your objectives. If being nice consistently leads to you being exploited, overlooked, or disrespected, then it's not a virtue. It's a self-sabotaging habit. This isn't about becoming a villain, it's about becoming a strategist. It's about understanding that the world often rewards those who are willing to play by a different set of rules. A common pitfall is to swing too far in the other direction, becoming overtly aggressive or overtly manipulative. This is not Machiavellian, it's amateurish. True strategic power lies in subtlety, in precision, in the ability to operate beneath the radar. Another mistake is to apply these principles indiscriminately. Not every situation requires a cold move. The art lies in discernment, in knowing when to be agreeable and when to be strategically indifferent. The world teaches you to be kind, to be compassionate, to be empathetic. But Machiavelli saw the trap. He knew that the moment you prioritize universal niceness, you open yourself up to exploitation. He knew that true power comes from a place of calculated self-interest, not naive altruism. So let's reiterate the core Machiavellian truth. Your desire to be nice is often your biggest strategic weakness. It's a vulnerability that, when unaddressed, leaves you open to manipulation, exploitation, and a constant state of reactive living. Most people believe that being agreeable is the path to peace and acceptance. But Machiavelli would smirk at this, because the second you prioritize universal niceness, you declare that everyone else's judgment and desires are more valid than your own. Here's the paradox. The more you try to please everyone, the more you lose yourself, and the less respected you become. True power doesn't come from seeking external validation. It comes from an internal locus of control, from a strategic indifference to the opinions of those who do not serve your highest good. The world teaches you to be a sheep, to follow the flock, to seek comfort in conformity. But the Machiavellian understands that the shepherd, not the sheep, controls the destiny. Imagine a transformed state. You are no longer swayed by the whims of others, no longer trapped in the endless cycle of seeking approval. You radiate an aura of quiet confidence, a presence so composed, so secure, so far above the petty noise of external expectations that attempts to manipulate or undermine you simply evaporate before they land. This isn't about becoming a bully, it's about becoming untouchable. This power comes not from brute force or emotional reactivity, but from internal shifts, from a strategic design of your interactions and your self-perception. You command respect effortlessly, not because you demand it, but because you embody it. You control perception, not by overt declarations, but by subtle, consistent actions that reinforce your strategic position. This is the effortless power that comes from understanding that your value is inherent, not granted by others. It's the freedom that comes from knowing when to be agreeable and when to be strategically indifferent. Machiavelli didn't care about being good in the conventional sense. He cared about being effective, about being in control. And the one who understands that being nice can be a strategic weakness is always in control of their own destiny, even when surrounded by those who operate from a place of naive benevolence. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. You build it like a fortress, stone by stone, by acting with restraint, by choosing stillness over reaction, by embracing the uncomfortable truths that lead to true power. Continue to explore these principles, to refine your understanding of human nature, and to master the art of strategic living. The journey to self-mastery is ongoing, and the insights you gain will continue to unlock deeper levels of influence and control. The path to true power is often counterintuitive, but it is always rewarding. Let's delve deeper into this pervasive problem. Think about the countless times you've found yourself in situations where your innate desire to be nice has actively worked against you. Perhaps it was in a professional setting where a colleague consistently offloaded their work onto you, knowing you wouldn't say no. You took on the extra burden, sacrificing your own time and energy, all to maintain an image of being helpful or easy to work with. But what was the true cost? Burnout? Missed opportunities for your own advancement? A subtle erosion of respect from your peers and superiors who began to see you as a convenient resource rather than a valuable contributor. Or consider personal relationships. How often have you suppressed your true feelings, avoided expressing a legitimate grievance, or allowed boundaries to be crossed simply to avoid an uncomfortable conversation or to prevent upsetting someone? This isn't just about being polite. It's about a deep-seated fear of disapproval, a subconscious belief of that your worth is contingent upon your agreeableness. This fear, while seemingly benign, is a powerful inhibitor. It prevents you from asserting your needs, from defending your interests, and ultimately, from living authentically. The consequence is a life lived on the terms of others, a constant negotiation of your own desires against the perceived expectations of the world around you. This isn't a path to genuine connection or lasting happiness. It's a recipe for resentment and a profound sense of powerlessness. The conventional wisdom tells us that being nice fosters harmony, but in reality it often breeds imbalance and exploitation. It creates a vacuum that others, consciously or unconsciously, will rush to fill, often at your expense. This is the silent struggle many face, a struggle born from a well-intentioned but strategically flawed approach to human interaction. It's time to expose this flaw and understand why it's not just a minor inconvenience, but a fundamental weakness in the pursuit of a life of purpose and influence. Now, let's confront the uncomfortable truth, the Machiavellian counterintuitive thesis that shatters this illusion of niceness as a virtue. To the strategic mind, niceness, when it becomes an automatic, unthinking response, is not a sign of moral superiority, but a glaring strategic vulnerability. It signals to the world that you are easily swayed, that your boundaries are permeable, and that your approval is readily available. This is not about advocating for cruelty or malice. It is about recognizing that in the complex dance of human interaction, where power and influence are constantly being negotiated, an uncritical adherence to niceness is akin to entering a battlefield armed with only a white flag. You become a predictable entity, a known quantity whose reactions can be anticipated and exploited. Those who understand the subtle mechanics of power will not see your agreeableness as a sign of your good character. They will see it as an invitation to push their own agenda, to take advantage of your reluctance to assert yourself. They will test your limits, and when they find none, they will expand their own territory at your expense. This is the brutal reality that Machiavelli, centuries ago, laid bare. The world does not operate on the principles of naive benevolence. It operates on the principles of strategic advantage, of perceived strength, and of the willingness to act in one's own self-interest. When you are perpetually nice, you are, in essence, disarming yourself in a world that is not always disarmed. You are sacrificing effectiveness for an illusion of harmony, a harmony that often comes at the cost of your own agency and well-being. This counterintuitive truth is not meant to make you cynical, but to make you clear-eyed. It is meant to strip away the comforting lies we tell ourselves about human nature and replace them with a pragmatic understanding of how influence truly operates. The path to power, to genuine respect, and to self-mastery often requires a willingness to shed the very virtues that society champions, especially when those virtues become shackles. It demands a re-evaluation of what truly constitutes strength and what, despite its pleasant facade, is actually a profound weakness. Let's be unequivocally clear. The pursuit of universal niceness rarely, if ever, translates into genuine respect or sustainable advantage in the arenas that truly matter, whether it's your career, your relationships, or your personal growth. What it consistently does, however, is cede your power. It shifts the locus of control away from you and into the hands of those who are more than willing to exploit your inherent agreeableness, the truly strong, the endowed. Individuals who command influence and respect operate from a fundamentally different understanding of human dynamics. They grasp that authentic influence doesn't stem from being universally liked, but from being selectively respected by those whose opinions and actions genuinely impact their trajectory. They are comfortable with discomfort. They allow the unspoken expectations of their compliance to hang in the air, untouched, because they comprehend the profound strategic maneuver at play to cultivate a state of strategic indifference to external validation. Their focus is internal, their compass is their own objectives, and their actions are guided by efficacy, not by the fleeting desire for superficial approval. This isn't about adopting the persona of a villain. It's about embodying the force of nature. It's about internalizing the truth that your inherent value is not, and never has been, determined by how meticulously you appease others, but by how decisively you command your own space, your own narrative, and your own destiny. When you consciously choose to shed the shackles of unthinking niceness and embrace a strategic mindset, the immediate psychological reverberations on those around you are nothing short of profound. They undergo a fundamental shift in perception. No longer do they view you as a mere resource to be utilized, a convenient yes person to be leveraged. Instead, they begin to perceive you as a formidable presence, a force to be reckoned with. The dynamic of your interactions undergoes a radical transformation, morphing from one of passive acceptance on your part to one of active, often cautious, consideration on theirs. You cease to be a doormat, easily trodden upon, and evolve into a gatekeeper, controlling access to your time, your energy, and your resources. This isn't about becoming an aggressor, it's about reclaiming your inherent agency. It's not about desperately seeking external validation, it's about cultivating an unshakable internal conviction. It is, at its core, about control, the profound control over your own narrative, your own boundaries, and your own strategic trajectory, unburdened by the emotional weakness of constant appeasement. Let's dissect the psychological underpinnings of why most individuals default to niceness and why this seemingly innocuous trait becomes a profound strategic liability. At its core, the pervasive drive to be agreeable is a deeply ingrained human response, often stemming from a primal need for acceptance and a profound aversion to rejection. From childhood, we are conditioned to seek approval, to avoid conflict, and to conform to societal norms. This conditioning, while fostering social cohesion, simultaneously cultivates a subconscious belief that our worth, our safety, and our belonging are inextricably linked to our ability to please others. We internalize the idea that being liked is synonymous with being secure. This creates a powerful emotional need, a constant craving for external validation that, when left unchecked, becomes a strategic Achilles heel. You find yourself perpetually seeking affirmation, not from a place of genuine self-worth, but from a desperate need to avoid disapproval. This isn't a conscious choice. It's an automatic, almost reflexive response. But here's the critical distinction. You don't want to be merely liked. You want to be effective. Likability, in its purest form, is a social lubricant, valuable in casual interactions. Effectiveness, however, is the engine of progress, the force that drives achievement, influence, and genuine self-actualization. The desire for constant harmony, for an unbroken chain of agreeable interactions, is not a sigil of emotional maturity. It is a strategic trap. It's a self-imposed limitation that actively prevents you from making the bold, often uncomfortable moves necessary to assert your true value, to defend your interests, and to carve out your unique path in the world. This isn't a virtue. It's a profound weakness, a signal to those who understand the subtle dynamics of power that you are willing to compromise your own interests for the sake of perceived peace. True power, the kind that commands respect and yields tangible results, lies not in being universally liked, but in being selectively respected. It's about understanding that your worth is not determined by how many people you appease, but by how decisively you command your own destiny, how clearly you articulate your boundaries, and how unflinchingly you pursue your objectives. It's about recognizing that the temporary discomfort of asserting yourself is a small price to pay for the long-term gains of genuine influence and self-mastery. The Machiavellian understands that the fear of disapproval is a far greater prison than any external constraint, and that true freedom begins when you liberate yourself from the tyranny of other people's opinions. This deeper understanding of the why behind our niceness is the first step towards dismantling its power over us and reclaiming our strategic agency. Now, let's ground this Machiavellian principle in tangible, real-world scenarios, demonstrating how a strategic shift away from unthinking niceness can immediately alter power dynamics. Consider a common professional setting, a team meeting where a colleague consistently interrupts you, dismisses your ideas with a wave of their hand, or subtly takes credit for your contributions. The conventional or nice response is often to let it slide, to avoid confrontation, to maintain a superficial sense of peace within the team. You might tell yourself it's not worth the friction or that you'll address it later, but each time you do this, you reinforce the colleague's behavior and diminish your own standing. The Machiavellian response, however, is not about aggression, but about strategic assertion. It's about holding your ground, reclaiming your intellectual territory, and subtly but firmly asserting your presence. You don't need to be rude, you need to be resolute. A simple, calm, and direct statement like, "I haven't finished my point, please allow me to conclude," delivered with unwavering eye contact, can be far more impactful than any emotional outburst. This isn't about winning an argument. It's about establishing a boundary and signaling that your contributions are to be respected. The immediate shift in the room's dynamic will be palpable. The interrupting colleague will likely falter, and others will take note of your newfound assertiveness. You've not only protected your intellectual property, but also elevated your perceived status. Consider another common scenario, a social gathering where someone, perhaps a casual acquaintance or even a family member, makes a backhanded compliment or a subtly demeaning remark at your expense. The nice response is often to laugh it off, to pretend it didn't sting, or to try and deflect with a self-deprecating joke. You absorb, be the blow, sacrificing your dignity for the sake of avoiding awkwardness. The strategic response, however, is to refuse to engage on their terms. Instead of reacting emotionally, you let the comment hang in the air. You meet their gaze with a neutral, almost curious expression, refusing to offer the validation they seek. There's no need for a witty comeback or a heated retort. The silence that follows, filled with their own discomfort, will be far more eloquent and powerful than any words. In that moment, you're not just refusing to be a victim. You're demonstrating that you are not a target. You're signaling that their petty attempts at undermining you are beneath your notice. This isn't about being overtly aggressive. It's about being strategically indifferent to their attempts to control the social dynamic. You're not just being assertive, you're being Machiavellian. You're not just being respected, you're being subtly feared, because you've shown that you operate by a different set of rules that prioritize your own composure and strategic advantage over the fleeting desire for superficial pleasantries. These initial applications, while seemingly small, are foundational. They are the building blocks upon which greater strategic mastery is built, allowing you to subtly but powerfully shift the dynamics of your interactions in your favor without resorting to overt aggression or sacrificing your integrity. Now, let us ascend to the realm of the colder, more elite Machiavellian maneuvers, strategies that transcend mere assertion and delve into the subtle art of psychological warfare. These are the tactics that truly differentiate the master strategist from the well-intentioned amateur. Sometimes being nice is not merely a weakness, it is a profound liability, a gaping wound in your strategic armor. Consider the exquisite art of strategic ambiguity. In a world that craves certainty, that demands clear-cut answers, the nice person feels an almost irresistible compulsion to provide them. When confronted with a direct question designed to corner them, to force a confession, or to box them into a predefined narrative, their instinct is to offer a transparent, definitive response. The Machiavellian, however, understands that clarity, in certain contexts, is a strategic disadvantage. They grasp the profound power of the non-answer, the artful deflection, the subtle yet decisive shift of focus. This is not about outright lying, which is often clumsy and easily exposed. Instead, it is about controlling the narrative by refusing to be pinned down, by maintaining an elusive quality that forces the interrogator to expend more energy and reveal their own hand. Imagine a situation where a competitor tries to extract sensitive information from you. The nice response might be to offer a partial truth, hoping to appease them. The Machiavellian response is to respond with a question, to offer a vague generality, or to pivot to an entirely different yet seemingly related topic. This creates a psychological vacuum, forcing the other party to fill it with their own assumptions, often leading them down a path of their own making, away from your true intentions. Another elite move, perhaps even more unsettling to the uninitiated, is the strategic withdrawal of attention or validation. But in a society starved for affirmation, where social currency is often measured in likes, shares, and constant engagement, the nice person is perpetually available, always ready with a comforting word, a supportive gesture, or an immediate response. They are the reliable source of emotional sustenance. But when someone has grown accustomed to your unwavering niceness, your constant availability, your predictable support, the sudden, subtle, and often inexplicable withdrawal of these can be profoundly unsettling. This is not about overt cruelty or ghosting. Those are blunt instruments. This is about recalibrating the dynamic with surgical precision, forcing them to reevaluate their assumptions about your accessibility and, more importantly, their own perceived importance in your orbit. It is a psychological judo throw, using their very expectation of your niceness, their reliance on your predictable benevolence, against them. Imagine a colleague who constantly seeks your advice but rarely reciprocates. The nice response is to continue offering your time and expertise. The Machiavellian response is to become subtly less available, to respond with a slight delay, to offer less detailed guidance, or to gently redirect them to other resources. This isn't about punishing them, it's about teaching them the value of your time and expertise, and subtly shifting the burden of effort back onto them. The mechanism behind these colder moves is deceptively simple yet devastatingly effective. They disrupt established patterns of interaction. They inject a calculated dose of uncertainty, and they compel others to invest significantly more cognitive and emotional effort in understanding your true intentions, thereby decisively shifting the power dynamic in your favor. They force others to play on your terms, to adapt to your rhythm, rather than the other way around. This is the essence of strategic control, not brute force, but the elegant manipulation of perception and expectation. It is the art of making others dance to a tune they didn't even realize you were playing. Let us now extend these Machiavellian principles and advanced tactics into a broader spectrum of complex, high-stakes, real-world contexts, demonstrating their superior efficacy compared to conventional, often naive reactions. Consider the cutthroat arena of a high-stakes business negotiation. The nice person, conditioned by societal norms of compromise and collaboration, often enters such a negotiation seeking common ground, readily offering concessions and harboring a deep-seated fear of appearing aggressive or unreasonable. Their primary objective is often to secure a deal, any deal, even if it means leaving significant value on the table. The Machiavellian negotiator, however, operates from a fundamentally different paradigm. They understand that the most powerful position in any negotiation is one of strategic indifference to the immediate outcome. This isn't to say they don't desire a favorable result. Rather, they cultivate an internal and external posture that communicates a profound willingness to walk away, to let the deal collapse if their terms are not met. They know that true leverage doesn't come from a desperate need for the deal, but from the other party's greater need for it. This isn't about being unreasonable or intractable. It's about projecting an unshakable aura of self-sufficiency, a quiet confidence that forces the other side to reevaluate their own position and often to concede more than they initially intended. The Machiavellian negotiator understands that the silence after a firm demand, the willingness to let the clock tick, can be more persuasive than any eloquent argument. They are not afraid to create discomfort, for they know that discomfort often precedes movement. Now let's pivot to the intensely personal and often emotionally charged landscape of romantic or intimate relationships. The nice partner, driven by a desire for harmony and a fear of conflict, frequently tolerates disrespect, avoids difficult conversations, and consistently sacrifices their own needs and boundaries to maintain a superficial peace. They might believe that by being perpetually accommodating, they are fostering love and connection. However, this often leads to a profound imbalance, resentment, and ultimately, the erosion of genuine respect. The strategic partner, applying Machiavellian insights not for manipulation, but for the cultivation of healthy, respectful dynamics, understands that true intimacy is built on mutual respect and clear boundaries, not one-sided appeasement. They set clear expectations, communicate their needs assertively, and are willing to endure the temporary discomfort of a difficult conversation for the long-term health and integrity of the relationship. This isn't about being selfish. It's about demanding the respect you deserve, thereby elevating the quality of the relationship for both parties. For instance, if a partner consistently dismisses your feelings, the nice response might be to internalize it or make excuses for them. The strategic response is to calmly but firmly state, "When you dismiss my feelings, I feel unheard, and that is not acceptable in our relationship." This isn't an accusation, it's a statement of fact and a boundary. It forces the other person to confront their behavior and the impact it has, rather than allowing it to continue unchecked. Finally, consider the vast and often chaotic realm of online interactions, where anonymity frequently emboldens aggression, misinformation, and petty squabbles. The nice person, with their innate desire for truth and justice, often engages in endless debates, seeking to correct every factual inaccuracy, to win every argument, or to defend themselves against every baseless accusation. They pour their energy into convincing strangers, often to no avail, and find themselves drained and frustrated. The Machiavellian, however, understands that not every battle is worth fighting, especially in the digital ether. They choose their engagements with surgical precision, knowing that sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. They refuse to be drawn into petty squabbles, into the emotional quicksand of online outrage, thereby preserving their mental energy, their reputation, and their strategic focus. They understand that feeding a troll only empowers it. Instead, they might strategically ignore, block, or, if necessary, deliver a single, devastatingly concise counterargument that leaves no room for further debate, then disengage. This isn't about cowardice, it's about efficiency and the conservation of resources. It's about understanding that your time and attention are your most valuable assets, and they should not be squandered on interactions that yield no strategic advantage. In each of these diverse scenarios, the Machiavellian approach consistently provides a superior outcome, not because it is inherently cruel, but because it is inherently more realistic about human nature and the dynamics of power. It emphasizes long-term strategic advantage over short-term emotional gratification, leading to more effective and empowering results. Now, as we delve deeper into these Machiavellian principles, a natural and entirely valid set of objections often arise, rooted in our conventional understanding of morality and social conduct. You might be thinking, won't this make me seem cruel, manipulative, or even unlikable? Or is this just a cynical justification for bad behavior? These are not only valid questions, but crucial ones, for they highlight the very tension between conventional morality and strategic effectiveness that this channel seeks to explore. However, from a purely strategic perspective, these objections, while emotionally resonant, often miss the fundamental point. The goal here isn't to win a popularity contest or to adhere to a rigid, universally accepted moral code. The goal is to be effective in achieving your objectives, to navigate the complexities of human interaction with agency and control, and to protect yourself from exploitation. If being nice consistently leads to you being exploited, overlooked, disrespected, or perpetually sacrificing your own well-being for the sake of others, then it ceases to be a virtue and transforms into a self-sabotaging habit. It becomes a strategic liability, a weakness disguised as a strength. This isn't about becoming a cartoon villain. It's about becoming a strategist, a clear-eyed observer of human nature, who understands that the world often rewards those who are willing to operate by a different, more pragmatic set of rules. It's about recognizing that the discomfort you might feel in shedding the cloak of unthinking niceness is a necessary step towards genuine empowerment,